Thus spake Zarathustra. Zarathustra. Thus spake Zarathustra. This is by Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche. So old Nietzsche. I forget how the elitist stuck-up assholes, the economics. Whenever a person says economics, I'm like, God, that motherfucker must be so smart and brilliant. I bet they have an economic model. I bet that motherfucker's Marx. That's fucking Karl Marx. How do I know? He said economics. The principal ideas advanced in Thus Spake Zarathustra is life is the will to power. That's all life is. It's the will to power. What is a Zarathustra? Zarathustra. It's not easy to say. So, life is the will to power, and he who would truly live must overcome the beliefs and conventions of common men. He must become an overman, i.e., Superman. I can't be your Superman. I can't be your Superman. Those who teach the Christian virtues of pity and meekness seek to corrupt man, to destroy his will to power, and to make him submit to those who prosper from the conventional way. The damn Christians, that's what they do. Yep, they say pity, meekness, and then they corrupt man, destroy his will to power, make him submit to those who prosper from the conventional way. Men who did not have the courage to live seek to escape by sleeping, by prizing the soul more than the body, and by seeking peace instead of war. The overman is virtuous when he frees himself from the belief in God and from the hope of an afterlife. He is nauseated by the rabble, and his joy comes from surpassing those who live by false hopes and beliefs. So, this fucking Nietzsche motherfucker, he seems crazy to me. This motherfucking Nietzsche, he's gonna fucking lose it. He is gonna crack, and he's gonna crack like a fucking egg. This motherfucker is gonna get all cracked up. So Nietzsche isn't what he's cracked up to be, or maybe he's exactly what he's cracked up to be. Bernard Shaw, H.L. Mencken, Theodore Dreiser, Robin Jeffers, Frank Norris, and Jack London, the socialist, looked up to Nietzsche. Everybody, he's like the Bart Simpson of the philosophers. He's the bad boy of the philosophers. And we're talking to Americans. Why would we even have a philosophy course? And if you're an American, you can barely even believe in Americanism. And that's it. You can't have any farther beliefs than that. I mean, who was that one guy, that Seeger, Bob Seeger? He was an anti-fascist, so he couldn't fight for America. Why? Because he wasn't just blindly pro-American. He actually had values for himself. So he didn't let Pete Seeger, old Pete Seeger. Zarathustra, is that Zoroaster? It is. So Zoroaster is also Zarathustra, regarded as the spiritual founder of Zoroastrianism. He's said to have been an Iranian prophet who founded a religious movement that challenged the existing. He was born 1000 BC. What? Who the hell is this damn Zoroaster, Zarathustra? What the hell is going on? So, according to Nietzsche, you got to have a will to power. You got to be a Superman. Don't listen to the goddamn Christians. Don't just sleep your life away. The overman is virtuous. He frees himself from the belief in God and the hope of an afterlife. He knows that this is it. This is all you got. And so when you see the goddamn rabble just fucking wasting their lives away, you got to be nauseated by the rabble. You got to stick up your nose and just be like you're just repulsed by the fucking rabble. And his joy comes from surpassing those who live by false hopes and beliefs. You live by false hopes and beliefs. Oh, okay, well, give your money to the false prophet. No, give it to the church. Give at least 10, 20, get 30%. No, go ahead and tithe 30%. You'll get more rewards in heaven. God will love you more if you tithe 50. Just tithe your whole goddamn. Worship of any sort is a return to childhood. If men must worship, then just worship a goddamn donkey. At least you can see a donkey. Jesus Christ, can you imagine a fucking religion that says, we don't even have a thing for you to worship. It's just an imaginary fucking, it's your own idea. It's your own imagination. We're going to get you to worship. You don't even have a donkey for me to worship? No, what about a golden calf? No, we can't do that either. What about a cross or a statue? Well, Catholics try to fucking pull that shit, but the Bible is strictly against any kind of icons. It's just God, right? Just the idea of God is all. Not even a person? Well, Jesus is kind of God, but no, we don't really know what God even looks like. We think he's like a man, but that's worship of any sort is a return. So an invisible fucking entity that you can't even fathom. Yep, that's who I live by. An invisible man? Maybe. I don't invisible thing. An invisible fart that just kind of fucking Nietzsche. So who is this? Zoroaster, an Iranian? Inaugurated movement, staple religion in ancient Iran, native speaker of old Avestan. No scholarly consensus on when he lived. I'll have to look more into this Zarathustra. Who is this Zarathustra mother of frustra? Who is this Zarathustra mother frustra? Let's see what we want. Wikipedia or Spark Notes? We're gonna go with Spark Notes. That's more for thus spake. We'll keep on going with what we can figure out for ourselves, though. I mean, these are the experts, though, you know? And you know what? For the literature assholes, if reading a Spark Notes or Cliff Notes books gets you to read the book and you understand the general vicinity of the other thing, people are such fucking pricks. It's like, no, you must read the whole book and nothing but the whole book. You can't just read the cover or one of the chapters or some of the dialogue and know what's going on. You gotta do more than just that. Analytical overview, summary, context. We'll go with analytical overview. The summary is basically, this is Nietzsche saying, hey, you guys, it's time for us to be assholes. Let's put the Christians off to the side. Religion is a bunch of horse shit. God is dead. And then he says women are only half human at best. They're like cats or cows. What? What the hell is this about? Get back in the kitchen. He's a sexist. One of the strangest books in the Western philosophical tradition. It's mock gospel. It relates the sayings and doings of Zarathustra in the style reminiscent of the Gospels in the Bible, laden with biblical allusions. It also harshly condemns Christianity, mocks the idea of a scripture and a holy person. Zarathustra, essentially a man who praises laughter and who is able even to laugh at himself. So those who can praise laughter. That being said, the book is also extremely uneven. Nietzsche wrote that in 10-day burst of inspirations. Clearly didn't revise his work carefully. The book is longer than it needs to be. It's self-indulgent, clumsy. Yeah, they say it's a masterpiece. Oh yeah, if he's such a masterpiece, then how come he writes so damn clumsily? He writes so damn clumsily. So we're approaching Nietzsche's philosophy as a whole. It's all about the will to power, right? It's all about getting to the top of the caterpillar pillar. Now you got to get to the top. Why? Because everybody else wants to get to the top. Who cares if there's nothing at the top? You got to step on a bunch of people's faces, get to the damn top, and then once you get to the top, I'm not for sure what he said. Oh, then you have a major breakdown. There it is. Okay, you have a major breakdown, and I mean that really kind of puts a big old hole in his whole theory. Okay, here everybody, I'm gonna tell you how to live. Oh shit, I don't know how to live at all. That was the guy telling us how to live? Yeah. The guy that broke down? Mm-hmm. Are we still listening to him? Yes, sir, Bob. We are still listening to him. I mean, you only go crazy once, but you're a genius. Well, it's kind of remarkable how those two traits actually coincide. Critique of mass culture, the Ubermensch, eternal, let's see. What about his life, insanity, and death? January 3rd, 1889, Nietzsche is going to suffer a mental breakdown. Let's come back to that, okay? So he's inconsistent, contradictory, provocative. The three principal themes in Thus Spake Zarathustra is the will to power, the consequent reevaluation of values, and the doctrine of eternal recurrence. So the doctrine of eternal recurrence, I'm not for sure what the hell that is. Maybe I'll type that up. But the consequent revaluation of values. That seems to be happening kind of over and over and over again. Doctrine of eternal recurrence. So let's see what Google eternal return. Eternal recurrence is a concept that the universe and all existence and energy has been recurring and will continue to recur in a self-similar form an infinite number of times across infinite time or space. That's interesting. So essentially the energy just stays. And okay, so insanity and death, we're going to get to that in a second. The will to power. Okay, yeah, tell the damn grass what to do, tell the cows what to do, tell everybody what to do. What Zarathustra must find is those who do not know how to live except by going under, for they are those who cross over. So those who live by going under are the ones who are going to cross over. Another renunciation of life is dedication to the idea of chastity. To the ideal of chastity. To deny the lust of the flesh is often to affirm the lust of the spirit. But why deny lust? Nietzsche asks, women are only half human at best, more like cats or cows. What is great is the passion of love between men and women, for all creation is a result of passion, the solution to all of women's problems, childbearing, and this is the only interest women have ever had in men. A man needs two things, danger and play. Danger and play. His interest in woman is that she is the most dangerous plaything. She is the recreation of the warrior. Her hope should be that she will overcome, she will bear the overman. Men are merely evil, but women are bad. That is why they're dangerous. Men can overcome them only by subjugating them completely. And old crone agrees with Zarathustra and adds her advice. You are going to women. Do not forget the whip. How should one die? Only when one has perfected his life. But if one cannot live a perfect life, then it is best to die in battle. Death must come because one wants it. Death must come because one wants it. Part 1 ends with the injunction that through Zarathustra's teaching, one should not become merely a disciplined and imitator of the prophet, but should learn through him to understand oneself. The section ends on a note that has become familiar. Dead are all gods. Now we want the overman to live. On that great noon, let this be our last will. Part 2, Nietzsche develops the notion of the will to power. The first part is largely negative. The second part provides the positive doctrine. It begins with the idea that the conjecture of God is meaningless because it defies the imagination. However, the conjecture of the overman is within the scope of the human mind. If one first eliminates error, one cause of error is pity, but the overman is willing to sacrifice Superman. Why are we going with overman? Superman. The Superman is willing to sacrifice himself and willing to sacrifice others. Priests cause error. They've taken death as God's triumphs. They need to be redeemed from the Redeemer. They're virtuous because they expect a reward in the afterlife. Dostoevsky and Jean-Paul Sartre on the notes from the underground. The sickness is called by the loathsome of life. Yeah, what's up with Dostoevsky? They loathe life. And Jean-Paul Sartre, nausea. Sartre's nausea. It is caused by the meaninglessness of existence. For Nietzsche, the malaise comes from seeing the rabble as one would see a field of dead, decaying animals, from seeing their stinking fires and soiled dreams. Nietzsche's statement of his positive doctrine is often interrupted by fell criticisms. The contrast between the desires of the masses and those of the Superman reminds him of the belief that all men are equal. But if men were born equal, there could be no Superman. Those who have preached equality have told the people what they want to hear rather than the truth. The truth can be discovered only by the free spirits that wills, desires, and loves. Such a free spirit finds that not all things can be understood and that some must be felt. The will to truth is just one aspect of the will to power. Such a will carries the free spirit beyond truth and falsity and beyond good and evil as well. The slave thinks that he can conquer his master by his servility. He has the will to power, but in its lowest form. The forerunner of the Superman has the will to be master, the will to command, the will to conquer. Since he's incapable of positive action, the slave can neither do good or evil. The master with his capacity for evil has a capacity for good, a capability for good. If the good requires positive action, so does the beautiful. Zarathustra asks, where is beauty? And answers, where I must will with all my will, where I want to love and perish, that an image may not remain a mere image. If one cannot find truth among those who tell the people what they want to hear, still less can one find it among the scholars who have removed themselves from the possibility of action and who knit the socks of the spirit. Neither can one turn to the poets. They know so little that they have to lie to fill the pages they write. They are the great myth makers. They created God. Zarathustra's mission is to lead men away from myths. Nietzsche continues, yes, I am Zarathustra, the godless. These teachers of resignation, whatever is small and sick and scabby, they crawl to like lice, and only my nausea prevents me from squashing them. Although much of what Nietzsche says is negative and critical, he constantly warns the reader that criticism should only be given out of love and in preparation for a positive doctrine to follow. Condemnation for its own sake is evidence only of an interest in filth and dirt. If God is dead, how did he die? Here, Nietzsche could not resist a criticism of the musician Wagner, the twilight of the gods. Oh, yeah, the gods died the way that Wagner... No, the gods laughed themselves to death. Nietzsche got Wagner. That's what he said. Oh, you think the gods died like the twilight? No, the gods died because they laughed themselves to death. The first commandment, to love yourself, the great law, do not spare your neighbor. Man is something that must be overcome. Nietzsche turns at last to the doctrine of eternal recurrence. The theory that history repeats itself in identical cycles is familiar to us through Plato, who derived it from the writings of Egyptian and Babylonian astronomers. It requires a concept of time that has not been congenial to Western thought ever since it was attacked by St. Augustine. For us, time seems to move in a straight line that has no turnings. Nietzsche, knowing that his doctrine would not be well received, stated it first of all as coming from Zarathustra's animals. Everything goes, everything comes back, eternally rolls the wheel of being. Whatever is happening now will happen again and has happened before. The great things of the world recur, but so do the small. The recurrence of the small things of the men farthest removed from the Superman seems at first impossible for Zarathustra to accept that the return is exactly the same, not that the best returns, not the part returns, not that all except the worst returns, but that all best and worst returns is difficult for him to acknowledge, but at last he is willing to abandon the doctrine of progress for the truth of eternal recurrence. The fourth part of Thus Spake Zarathustra, not intended by Nietzsche to be the last, is concerned with the consequences of accepting some portion of Zarathustra's teaching without accepting the whole. One must take all or none. Much of this consists of parodies of Christian views, Little Bovine, Kingdom of Heaven. Man is not to be preserved, he is to be overcome. Man must be brave, even though there is no God. Man must be strong because he's evil, and he must hate his neighbor as a consequence of the will to power. But once more, this doctrine is too strong for the people who listen to Zarathustra. Although God is dead, it's necessary for them to make a God of their own, and this time they choose a donkey. The animal fulfills all the requirements for a god. He is a servant of men. He does not speak and therefore is never wrong. The world created as stupidly as possible is in his own image. Everyone is able to believe in the donkey's long ears. Zarathustra, after upbraiding the people for worshiping a donkey, is told by them that it's better to worship some god, even a donkey, than no god at all. At least there's something that the worshiper could see, touch, hear, smell, taste. All the 25 senses. God seems more credible in this form. The first atheist was the man who said that God is spirit. Zarathustra replies to this plea for the donkey by pointing out that worship of any sort is a return to childhood. The everyman has no wish to enter the kingdom of heaven. He wants the earth. However, if the people need to worship, let them worship donkeys, if such a belief helps them. No man except Zarathustra has seen the earth as it is, but the Superman will come and he will see it. He will command the earth and it will obey. With this vision in mind, Zarathustra turns again to the world to search for and bring into perfection the Superman. The Superman. Pertinent literature, Nietzsche, philosopher, psychologist, Antichrist, Walter Kaufmann. Nietzsche's Gift, 1977. So if you want to read some more crap about this damn Nietzsche. So let's talk about what happens to him, okay? January 3rd, 1889. It's a brand new year, and it's 1889. What the hell's going to happen? Nothing. Except for Nietzsche suffers a mental breakdown. Frederick suffers a mental breakdown. 2 cops approached him after he caused a public disturbance of the streets of Turin. What happens remains unknown, but an often repeated tale from shortly after his death states that Nietzsche witnessed the flogging of a horse. At the other end of the Piazza, Carlo Alberto ran to the horse, threw his arms around its neck to protect it, and then collapsed to the ground. Whoa! So basically he's saying his entire fucking philosophy is wrong. The will to power, he was witnessing a man doing the will to power to the horse, and yet he felt a kinship, an empathy, a common humanity with the horse. He saw there was life behind the eyes. No, don't you hit this horse. And then what the hell happened to this will? What happened to your will to fucking power bullshit, mother? What happened to Thus to Zarathustra? I read your damn book and now And then two policemen approached him after he caused a disturbance. So he says, "No, don't hurt this horse." And then he falls to the ground, and then two cops come up to him. I could barely hear the story and really accept it. I mean, you're just sitting there by yourself. I just watched a police video. The guy had a vigil. He just lit a candle there on a sidewalk, and a cop came up to him and started fucking with him for lighting a candle and sitting on a bench watching the candle for a vigil for his fucking buddy, for his friend that died, the dearly departed. Freedom of religion, freedom in America, not around a fucking authoritarian fascist dickhead. So two policemen approached him. I'm like, oh, fuck. Well, there's the reason he had a mental breakdown right then. They're like poking him and poking him. He's like, stop poking me. But then he understands what the deal is, right? It's all about trying to dominate. One person is the will to power. You got these authoritarian assholes, and then the poor horse beater, right? You got the poor horse is getting beat up by the horse beater. Number of friends, including Cosimo Wagner, Jacob Burckhardt. Most of them were signed Dionysus. Some of them signed Dergerich, the crucified one. I have had Caiaphas put in fetters. Also, last year I was crucified by the German doctors in a very drawn-out manner. Wilhelm Bismarck and all the anti-Semites abolished. He wanted to kill all the anti-Semites. So... Additionally, he commanded the German emperor to go to Rome to be shot and summoned the European powers to take military actions against Germany, writing that the Pope should be put in jail and that he, Nietzsche, created the world and was in process of having all the anti-Semites shot. January 6, 1889, Burckhardt showed the letter he had received from Nietzsche to Overbeck. The following day, Overbeck received a similar letter and decided that Nietzsche's friends had to bring him back to Basel. Overbeck traveled to Turin, brought Nietzsche to a psychiatric clinic in Basel. By that time, Nietzsche appeared fully in the grip of a serious mental illness, and his mother, Franziska, decided to transfer him to a clinic in Jena under the direction of Otto Binswanger. January 1889, they proceeded with the planned release of Twilight of the Idols, by that time already printed and bound. From November 1889 to February 1890, the art historian Julius Langbin. Twilight of the Idols. We gotta at least publish his books. Yeah, it looks like he's going down. Attempted to cure Nietzsche, claiming that the methods of the medical doctors were ineffective in treating Nietzsche's condition. Langbin assumed progressively greater control of Nietzsche until his secretiveness discredited him. In March 1890, Franziska removed Nietzsche from the clinic. In May 1890, brought him to her home in Naumburg. During this process, Overbeck and Gast contemplated what to do with Nietzsche's unpublished works. In February, they ordered a 50-copy private edition of Nietzsche contra Wagner, but the publisher, C.G. Naumann, secretly printed 100. Overbeck and Gast decided to withhold publishing The Antichrist and Ecce Homo because of their more radical content. Nietzsche's reception and recognition enjoyed their first surge. In 1890, Nietzsche's sister Elizabeth returned from Nueva Germania in Paraguay following the suicide of her husband. She studied Nietzsche's works and piece by piece took control of the publication. Overbeck was dismissed, and Gast finally cooperated after the death of Franziska. In 1897, Nietzsche lived in Weimar, where Elizabeth cared for him and allowed visitors, including Rudolf Steiner, who in 1895 had written Friedrich Nietzsche, a fighter against his time, one of the first books praising Nietzsche, to meet her uncommunicative brother. Elizabeth employed Steiner as a tutor to help her understand her brother's philosophy. Steiner abandoned the attempt after only a few months, declaring that it was impossible to teach her anything about philosophy. Nietzsche's insanity was originally diagnosed as tertiary syphilis in accordance with the prevailing medical paradigm at the time. Anne Frank got syphilis. So I wonder if before Anne Frank starved to death if she went crazy. What an awful freaking end. God, what an awful end. Who would arrest Anne Frank? The cops. Thin blue line? Kiss my ass, motherfuckers. The cops would arrest Anne Frank. The cops also were the ones we were fighting against in the Revolutionary War. And the cops in the South for the Civil War. George, let's see, Battelle dropped dark hints. Man incarnate must also go mad, and Rene Girard's post-mortem psychoanalysis posits a worshipful rivalry with Richard Wagner. Nietzsche had previously written all superior men who were irresistibly drawn to throw off the yoke of any kind of morality and to frame new laws had, if they were not actually mad, no alternative but to make themselves or pretend to be mad. Daybreak 14. The diagnosis of syphilis has since been challenged, and a diagnosis of manic depressive illness with periodic psychosis followed by vascular dementia was put forward by Cybulska prior to Shane's study. Leonard Sachs suggested the slow growth of a right-sided retroorbital meningioma as an explanation of Nietzsche's dementia. Orth and Trimble postulated frontotemporal dementia, while other researchers have proposed a hereditary stroke disorder called Cadosil. Poisoning by mercury, a treatment for syphilis at the time of Nietzsche's death, has also been suggested. Poisoning by mercury. Somebody killed him. Oh, you got syphilis? Just take this mercury. In 1898, 1899, Nietzsche suffered at least 2 strokes. That's what happened with that cult. The woman, they had let her die, but she was taking all those, she was like silver colloidal shit, and then she was anorexic and then just starved herself to death, which is super sick and fucked up, but it's a slow-ass suicide. So I think Alonzo Payne made the right call, because what could you fucking charge the other people with for giving a shit about her and wanting her to still be alive? I don't know. They partially paralyzed him, leaving him. Maybe that should have been put in front of a jury. We always get... None of this gets put in front of a jury. And how can the press write about it if it's not in front of a jury? They partially paralyzed him. He had 2 strokes in 98 and 99. Leaving him unable to speak or walk. He likely suffered from clinical hemiplegia on the left side of his body by 1899. Contracted pneumonia in mid-August 1900. Had another stroke during the night of 24-25 August and died about noon on August 25th. Elizabeth had him buried beside his father at the Church of Rock in Lutzen. His friend and secretary Gass gave his funeral oration, proclaiming, "Holy be your name to all future generations." Elizabeth Forster Nietzsche compiled The Will to Power from Nietzsche's unpublished notebooks and published it posthumously in 1901. Because his sister arranged the book based on her own conflation of several of Nietzsche's early outlines and took liberties with the material, the scholarly consensus has been that it does not reflect Nietzsche's intent. For example, Elizabeth removed aphorism 35 of the Antichrist, where Nietzsche rewrote a passage of the Bible. Indeed, Mazzino Montanari, the editor of Nietzsche's Noclus, called it a forgery, yet the endeavor to rescue Nietzsche's reputation by discrediting The Will to Power often leads to skepticism about the value of his late notes, even of his whole Naturalist. However, his Naturalist and The Will to Power are distinct. So, he fell in love with a horse. And then that broke him, because he was like, wait a second. If man is capable of love, then it's not just about power. It's also about love. Life is about power and love? Oh my God. Everything I've written is a lie. Breakdown. That's my 2 cents.